Hello. How in the world is this going to work? Her speech is all kinds of funky, right? Don't worry. I had the same thought when I was chosen to be the student speaker at my graduation from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at ASU. Even though I was extremely honored, it was the first time I had a distinct Moses moment as my terrified heart echoed his sentiments from Exodus 4:10. "O Lord, I'm not very good with spoken words. I never have been, and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled." Before that time, I'd never dreamed of speaking in front of crowds. The Lord had compensated for my awkward speech by giving me a knack with paper and ink from the time I was in 4th grade, and that was cool with me. But He is God, and He wouldn't let me off so easily, because He has greater plans for me than I could ever make for myself. Just as He answered Moses in Exodus 4:11-12, who makes a person's mouth, who decides whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. Giving that speech was the first time I'd ever used an augmentative communication device to speak publicly. My hands were shaking so badly from nervousness, all I could do was pray I wouldn't miskey any of the codes for the different sections of my speech. I did get through it without mistakes, and even received a standing ovation. Looking back after nearly 9 years of sharing my story publicly since graduation, I've realized the Lord used that experience as a refutable reminder of something He'd been telling me in more personal ways for my entire life, that I must be faithful with everything He's given me, because all of it has a specific purpose, including this dysfunctional body of mine. We're told we will be rewarded if we make good use of our gifts in the parable of the talents from Matthew 25. I'm learning more and more that some of our greatest gifts will also be comprised of our most difficult challenges. It's the first thing I have to remember when I wake each morning, and my gaze immediately falls on this cumbersome and often extremely uncomfortable power chair that's also one of the biggest blessings in my life. I'm sharing this with you because the fact is everyone, no matter who they are, has one prominent chair in their lives. It's the thing that's always there in the corner of every room, regardless of where they go, inescapable and unavoidable. Though others may not see it, it's the one object or condition they constantly sit on and wrestle with. It dictates how they live each day. Mine is obvious, of course, because I was born with cerebral palsy, CP for short. CP is a developmental disability that affects overall muscle function, including speech in my case. CP never affects two people exactly the same way. In some cases, it can cause cognitive delays, but I am not one of them. That simply means while all of my thought processes are normal, there is miscommunication between my brain and the rest of my body. This obviously makes the majority of my daily living activities much more difficult and time-consuming than they should be. But what's even more infuriating than my never-ending fight to be productive each day is the battle to overcome the prejudices and unfounded assumptions of others. There are a myriad of examples I could cite, but the most common and sometimes hurtful is having people jump to the conclusion that I'm intellectually deficient or unable to attain certain accomplishments because my speech isn't readily intelligible. If I couldn't feel the Lord's firm, loving grip on my shoulder in those moments, my gut reaction would likely be to take great offense, then respond with angry sarcasm. But I don't, because I know the Lord has just given me an opportunity to be a vessel of His grace. So I surrender my chair to Him and follow His prompting in my explanation. Some wonderfully blessed conversations about God's love and faithfulness have grown out of such situations, as described in 1 Peter 3:15 through 16. Instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. But do this in a gentle and respectful way. Keep your conscience clear. Then if people speak against you, they will be ashamed when they see what a good life you live because you belong to Christ. One of the most common and more serious questions I'm asked is if I'm angry at God for my disability. The most honest answer I can give you is no, I am not. I've come to understand that because God does in fact have a perfect plan and distinct calling on my life, I wouldn't be the woman He desires me to be, able to reach those He puts in my path, without this chair. But having that understanding in no way keeps me from times of gut-wrenching frustration, whether from the exhaustion of having persistent back and neck pain or coming to my emotional boiling point and snapping. Really? Couldn't you just let me speak clearly? It's then I will lock myself in my bedroom or wait for those precious few hours when I'm alone in my apartment and let my defenses completely crumble before the Lord. I can always feel Him keeping a patient watch over me until my fists tire of banging and the streams of tears run dry. It usually doesn't take long because I honestly hate wallowing. Then, with His gentle hand on my head and loving voice in my ear, He reminds me of Paul's encouragement from Romans, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. With His arms around me, I can take a deep breath and continue rolling in grace. I'm always happy to share my experiences and answer anyone's honest questions about almost any aspect of my life if it will give them renewed hope. I've heard some pretty creative ones, especially from people who have gotten a laugh out of one of my taken from real-life scenes with improbable theater company. Trust me. I frequently also have strangers approach me, offering to pray for my healing. I never refuse prayer because I most definitely believe the Lord is capable of repairing the communication between my brain and my muscles if it is His will for my life, but I have to consider the greater plan He may have for me being in this chair. Allowing Jesus to use the burden I bear has fostered my deep compassion for and provided ample opportunities to reach an ever-expanding group of people who desperately need Him. Johnny Rexon Tada, president of Johnny and Friends Ministries, is an internationally known speaker, author, and artist who only found her calling after becoming paralyzed from a diving accident at age 17. She often says, people with disabilities don't need to be fixed. People with disabilities need Jesus. The Lord has a specific purpose for whatever circumstance you're in at this very moment. As He explained to the disciples when they asked about the blind man in John 9:3, it was not because of his sins or his parents' sins. Jesus answered, this happened so the power of God could be seen in him. God also knows the condition of your heart, and I believe that more often than not the Lord will make the healing of our hearts a priority over our bodies. That's part of why my first book, The Little Butterfly Girl, is a fairy tale. I don't think there's a better way to understand the scope of God's love in the midst of hardship than knowing He delights in even our most childlike dreams. Talk of this story inevitably leads to people's second most common inquiry, what else I'm writing? Well, I do have a memoir in the works. But the events of the last few months, chiefly God's leading me to speak publicly on a regular basis and become runner-up for Miss Wheelchair Arizona 2015, has helped me recognize the Lord's larger purpose for my writing talents. So, I've also founded a creative storytelling services business called Brooks Butterfly Touch, wherein people can come to me when they have a story to share or a specific message to convey to others, but aren't sure how to do so. We will work together to find the format that works best for their preferred communication styles and specific audience. May it be a full manuscript, slideshow and/or visual presentation, a performance script or video, or even just simple talking points. I brought a few of my story packets if anyone would like more information. Through all my recent experiences, God has shown me that our personal stories, however they come, are our most powerful tools. They will take us farther than any combination of facts and figures. Some are meant to be uplifting and initiate positive change in our communities. Others may be used to illustrate one's abilities. Sometimes, however, people need ways to share their abilities or tell their life's stories through more than just words. Obviously, I understand this better than most. That's why I feel the Lord has given me an intense desire to assist others in harnessing the strengths of their own stories. Peter wrote, God's gifts of grace come in many forms. Each of you has received a gift in order to serve others. You should use it faithfully. Therefore, my pen, wheels, and everything in between is forever pledged to the service of the kingdom. With that said, my friends, thank you for letting me share a bit of my heart in my chair with you. And I hope I've helped you find the courage to surrender your chair to Jesus, no matter what bad shape it's in or how incredibly uncomfortable it is. As it's written in Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. I promise you He'll use your chair and everything in it to fill your life with unspeakable joy. For as it says in my favorite verses from 2 Corinthians, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time He said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses, and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. If you count your chair among your gifts, the reward will be greater than any struggle it might bring.
One thing I want to go ahead and turn my mic up. One thing I want to say, I want to thank you, for being a good example, Brooke, of what it means. I think so often we try to separate ourselves from our burden, and I think in you there's a wonderful example of what it means to embrace the burden and to see God's greater purposes for it. And so, thank you for that. All right, appreciate it. Love you.